to Deep Sleep Stories. If these stories have helped you through restless nights, please leave a review. Reviews are what help this podcast grow, reach more listeners, and stay alive. Without them, even something meaningful can slowly disappear. So if this show has brought you comfort, that small act truly helps keep it going. Now, settle in, and let's begin.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, where you can settle gently into the quiet hours and let the day loosen its hold. Tonight, you are invited to rest beside a hillside path at dusk, where a shepherd walks slowly home with his flock, following the soft curve of the land beneath a deepening sky. Let your body become still. Let your shoulders soften. Let your hands rest open as though they have been carrying something all day and may finally set it down. Breathe in slowly and imagine cool evening air moving through fields of wild grass. Breathe out and feel the weight of the day drift away like dust shaken from a cloak at the threshold of a warm cottage. There is nowhere else to be, nothing more to solve. The world of this story moves at the pace of footsteps on moss, at the pace of sheep bells gently chiming, at the pace of twilight spreading over the hills. You may picture the land before you now. A narrow trail winds along the slope of a green valley, passing through heather, fern, and pale stones, warmed all day by the sun. Below, a stream glimmers in quiet bends. Above, the first evening star waits patiently behind a veil of lavender cloud. The air smells of grass, earth, wool, and the distant smoke of hearth fires beginning to glow in small village homes. As you breathe, the scene becomes softer. The edges of the room around you fade. The trail waits. And now, without needing to follow too closely, you may simply listen as the shepherd begins his quiet journey home. At the western edge of the valley, where the hills rose like sleeping animals beneath the dusk, there lived a shepherd named Elias. He was not a hurried man. The village below often measured its days by bells, shadows, market calls, and the turning of wheels along the road. But Elias measured his by the weathered faces of the hills, by the flowering of thyme between stones, by the ripening of berries along the hedgerows, and by the familiar voices of his sheep as they grazed across the high meadows. Each evening, when the sun lowered itself toward the far blue ridge, Elias gathered his flock from the open pasture and led them down the quiet trail toward home. The path was old, older than the village, older than the stone bridge at the stream, perhaps older than any story the elders could remember. It crossed the hillside in a gentle wandering line, dipping through pockets of shadow and rising again into gold. On this particular evening, the day had been warm and bright, but now the air cooled in slow breaths. A softness rested over everything. The grass, tall and silver-tipped, leaned as though listening. The clouds had thinned into long ribbons, rose-colored at their edges, and beyond them the sky deepened from pale blue to violet. The world seemed to be speaking in whispers, and Elias, who had spent his life among such whispers, listened with a peaceful heart. He stood for a while at the crest of the meadow, one hand resting on his wooden crook. Around him, the flock grazed lazily, reluctant to leave the last sweetness of the day. The sheep moved like little clouds over the slope, their wool catching the sunset light. Some were cream white, some gray as river stones, and one old ewe, Manta, had a dark patch over one eye, giving her the solemn look of a village judge. Elias smiled at her. "Come now," he said softly, though the words were hardly more than breath. "The evening path is waiting." Marta lifted her head, chewed thoughtfully, and gave a quiet bleat, as if she had expected this reminder all along. The bellwether, a gentle ram named Rowan, stepped forward first. Around his neck hung a small bronze bell, dulled by years of weather and touched by the hands of Elias's father and grandfather before him. When Rowan moved, the bell rang in a low, mellow tone, not sharp or bright, but round and sleepy, like a sound remembered from childhood. One by one, the sheep began to gather. They did not rush. Nothing on that hillside rushed at dusk. The shadows lengthened slowly. The breeze moved slowly. Even the bird song seemed to loosen and fall into longer notes. Elias waited until the last lamb had bounded from a patch of clover and rejoined its mother, and then he turned toward the trail. The first part of the path curved through a field of wild thyme. Each step released its delicate fragrance, warm and herbal, mingling with the scent of trampled grass. Bees, heavy with the day's gathering, drifted homeward through the flowers, humming in low circles before disappearing into the dim edges of the meadow. A pair of swallows darted overhead, then vanished down the valley, swift blue shapes against a sky slowly filling with evening. Elias walked with calm, practiced steps. His boots knew every hollow in the earth, every stone that might turn underfoot, every place where rain collected in spring, and where frost lingered in autumn. Beside him trotted his old sheepdog, Brindle, whose muzzle had gone white but whose eyes remained bright and kind. Brindle no longer ran wide circles around the flock as he had in his youth. These days he preferred to walk near Elias, pausing now and then to look back with a quiet seriousness, as if reminding the sheep that he was still, despite age and slower paws, the keeper of order on the trail. The flock followed in a loose, flowing line. Their hooves made soft sounds on the earth. Their bells, only a few among many woolly necks, chimed gently in uneven rhythm. Tin, bronze, and old iron each gave a slightly different note, and together they formed a lullaby that belonged only to the valley at dusk. Down below, the stream caught the last of the sun. It wound through alder and willow, its surface broken by smooth stones and trailing grasses. From the hilltop, it looked like a length of pale ribbon laid carefully in the fold of the land. Elias could hear it now and then when the wind shifted, a low murmuring that seemed to answer the bells. At a bend in the path, the trail passed beside 3 ancient hawthorn trees. Their trunks, twisted together, gnarled and silver-barked, and their branches leaned over the way like old friends sharing a secret. In spring they filled with blossoms, in autumn with red berries, but now in late summer they held small leaves darkening in the twilight. The sheep always slowed there, for the ground was soft and cool, and a little pool of shadow gathered beneath the branches. Elias paused beneath the hawthorns. He did not need to pause, but he often did. There was something about that place, something hushed and kind. The air seemed denser there, full of old rain, old bird song, and all the evenings that had passed before. From the shadows came the faintest rustle. Brindle lifted his ears, not in alarm, but in curiosity. A hare appeared near the roots of the middle tree. It sat upright for a moment, ears long and still, its round, dark eye catching a thread of light. Elias did not move. The sheep did not seem to notice. The hare looked at the shepherd, then at the flock, as though weighing some quiet thought, before it turned and slipped through the grass without a sound. Elias watched it go. "Evening to you," he murmured. Then, with the flock settling again into motion, he continued down the slope. The trail narrowed beyond the hawthorns and passed through a shallow cut between mossy banks. Ferns grew there in feathered layers, their fronds brushing the sheep as they moved through. The air became cooler and carried the damp scent of stone. Small white moths stirred from the leaves. They drifted in little wavering paths, neither rising nor falling quickly, but floating as if the dusk itself had given them form. Here the sky was partly hidden by the slope, and the flock seemed to move through a green twilight tunnel. Rowan's bell sounded softer, muffled by ferns and moss. Elias ran his fingers lightly along the bank as he walked, feeling the velvety dampness beneath his hand. He remembered walking there as a boy, following behind his father, trying to place his feet exactly where the older man had stepped. In those days, the flock had seemed enormous to him. The hills endless, the path full of mystery. He had imagined that foxes watched from every shadow, that stars were lanterns hung by unseen hands, that the wind knew his name. As he grew older, the world had become more familiar, but it had never become less wondrous. Elias had learned that mystery did not vanish. When one understood a path, it only became quieter. At the end of the fern hollow, the land opened again. The flock emerged onto a sloping field where the grass shone faintly in the fading light. Far below, the village had begun to glow. Windows flickered gold. Smoke rose from chimneys in thin blue strands. Somewhere a gate creaked. Somewhere a woman called a child indoors. Somewhere, perhaps at the baker's cottage, a door opened and released the warm smell of bread into the evening street. Elias could not hear all these things clearly from the hillside, but he knew them. He knew the hour by the way the village gathered itself in. Chickens would be stepping up to their roosts. The blacksmith would be covering the embers of his forge. The innkeeper would be setting lamps in the windows. The old widow at the lane's end would be pouring water over mint leaves in a chipped blue cup. The the world below was folding its hands for the night. The sheep knew home was nearer now. Some quickened their pace, then slowed again when Brindle gave them a mild look. A lamb with a tuft of wool standing high on its head skipped sideways, startled by its own shadow, and Elias laughed quietly. The laugh did not break the peace. It joined it. As they crossed the open field, the first star appeared. It shone above the ridge, small and steady, neither bright enough to command attention nor dim enough to be lost. Elias looked up and gave it a nod. He had always greeted the first star ever since he was young. He did not wish upon it, not exactly. Wishes felt too sharp for that hour. Instead, he offered gratitude wordless and simple for another day brought safely toward rest. The path descended toward a grove of beech trees. Their trunks were smooth and pale, rising from the hillside like columns in an old, roofless hall. Their leaves formed a high canopy, and when the wind moved through them, they whispered in countless small voices. At dusk, the grove held a light of its own. Not sunlight, not moonlight, but something in between, a gray-gold hush that seemed to gather along the bark and linger in the leaves. Elias stepped beneath the trees, and the flock followed. The bells changed again in the grove. Their sounds rose and returned from the trunks, soft echoes folding back on themselves. The sheep moved more closely together, their wool brushing lightly, their breathing warm in the cool shade. Brindle padded ahead, then paused beside a fallen branch, sniffed it, and sneezed with great dignity. There was a spring hidden in the beech grove. It bubbled from beneath a stone and filled a small basin worn smooth by weather and time. The water never ran dry, not in summer heat, not in winter frost. Shepherds had rested there for generations, travelers too, and once, according to village tale, a queen in disguise had knelt there to drink and left a silver pin among the roots. Elias did not know if the tale was true. He liked it better unproven. He led the flock toward the spring, and the sheep lowered their heads to drink. The water made tiny sounds against the stone. Brindle drank after them, lapping carefully. Elias crouched and dipped his hand into the basin. The coldness surprised him, as it always did, clear and bright as if it came from some place deeper than the hill. He touched the water to his brow. For a moment, everything was still. Then from somewhere among the beeches came a single note of birdsong. It was not the lively singing of morning, not the busy calling of afternoon. It was one long, liquid note, followed by silence, then another. A blackbird hidden in the leaves was giving the last song of the day. Elias closed his eyes and listened. The sheep drank. The leaves whispered. The spring spoke quietly to itself. In that small pause, the valley seemed held in a gentle palm. When the flock had drunk enough, Elias rose and guided them onward. Beyond the grove, the trail met a low stone wall running along the hillside. The stones had been placed without mortar, each one leaning into the next. holding together through balance and patience. Lichen patterned them in pale green and silver. Tiny flowers grew in the cracks. A field mouse slipped along the base of the wall, carrying something too small to name. The flock moved beside the wall in a long, pale ribbon. On the other side, an orchard sloped down toward the village. The apple trees were not yet ready for harvest, but their fruit hung round and drowsy among the leaves. Some apples were green as rain, some flushed with red where the sun had touched them. The scent of them drifted upward, faint and sweet. Elias thought of the autumn to come. Baskets, pressed cider, the village square filled with straw, laughter, and the creak of wagons. Then he let the thought pass. Autumn would arrive when it arrived. For now, there was only the softness of this evening, the hush between seasons, the sheep following the wall, the sky growing deeper. A crescent moon had risen. It was thin and delicate, like a shaving of pearl. It floated above the orchard, and its light was barely more than a suggestion. Still, it brought a cool brightness to the edges of leaves, to the stones, to the backs of the sheep nearest the path. Marta, the old ewe, slowed near a place where the wall dipped. Elias noticed at once she had walked this trail too many years to stumble without reason. He stepped to her side and saw that a burr had tangled in the wool near her foreleg. It tugged when she moved, not painfully perhaps, but enough to bother her. "Ah," Elias said, "a little thorn for a dignified lady." He knelt, holding her gently. Marta stood still, patient as twilight. With careful fingers, he worked the burr free from her wool. It was a small thing, brown and hooked, clinging with stubborn purpose. Elias placed it on the wall, where perhaps it would find new soil in some crack between stones. Marta gave one soft bleat and nudged his sleeve. "You're welcome," he whispered. The flock waited. No one hurried him. Brindle sat nearby, tail curled around his paws, watching the orchard as though guarding against apple thieves from another realm. When Elias stood, the trail seemed even quieter than before. The village lights below had grown brighter, but the hillside had entered that brief, enchanted hour when day had not fully ended and night had not fully begun. Boundaries softened. The path, the wall, the orchard, the flock, the shepherd, the dog, all appeared woven into one slow-moving dream. They continued. The orchard gate, the trail split. One way led steeply down to the village road. The other curved along the hill a little farther, passing a meadow known as the Starling Field. The shorter path was practical, and on stormy evenings, Elias took it. But the longer path was gentler, and on a dusk like this, when the sky was clear and the flock calm, he followed the curve toward Starling Field. The grass there grew soft and fine. In daylight it shimmered with wings, for flocks of starlings came to feed among the insects, rising and turning together like smoke. Now most had gone to roost, but their presence lingered in the name and in the occasional rustle from the hedges. The trail through Starling Field was nearly level. Elias let his crook rest across his shoulders and walked without effort, his hands loose over the wood. The sheep spread slightly, nibbling as they went. He allowed it. There was time. There was always time at dusk if one remembered not to spend it too quickly. Above, more stars appeared. Not many yet. Just enough to suggest the great quiet waiting beyond the sky's blue veil. Elias had spent many nights beneath those stars during lambing season, when sleep came in scraps and the lantern burned low in the shed. He knew the constellations as companions, though he did not know all their proper names. There was the crooked row he called the shepherd's ladder, the cluster his mother had called the milk bowl, the bright pair his father had called the watchful eyes. The official names belonged perhaps to scholars and sailors, but Elias's names belonged to the valley, and that was enough. As he walked, he heard another sound beneath the bells and the wind. A flute. It came from far off, or seemed to. A faint wandering tune, simple and slow, rising from somewhere beyond the hedgerow. Elias paused, turning his head. Brindle paused too. Rowan's bell gave one last note and settled. The tune drifted through the field like a ribbon of smoke. It might have been a villager walking home from the upper road. It might have been a child practicing by a window. It might have been only wind passing through a hollow reed. Elias did not seek the answer. The tune was gentle, and that was enough. It moved in 3 soft phrases, each one falling at the end as though laying itself down to rest. The sheep listened, or seemed to. Even the lamb with the high tuft stood still, ears angled forward. Then the tune faded. The evening filled the space it left. Elias smiled and started walking again. At the lower end of Starling Field, the trail passed through an old wooden gate. Its hinges had rusted into a voice of their own, and when Elias opened it, the gate gave a long, sighing creak. He held it wide while the flock passed through. Rowan first, Manta near the middle, the lambs scattered among their mothers. Brindle last, after checking the field with one final sweep of his gaze. Elias closed the gate carefully. Beyond it, the land descended in a series of gentle terraces. Small wildflowers grew along the edges, closing their petals for the night. The air smelled faintly of lavender from a cottage garden below. Crickets had begun their steady song. Their rhythm seemed to rise from the earth itself, a fine silver stitching that joined one moment to the next. The path widened here, becoming soft with dust. In dry weather, the sheep lifted little clouds around their hooves, and those clouds caught the last light like mist. Elias watched the dust drift and settle. Each small cloud rose, glowed, vanished. It reminded him of breath on cold mornings, of flour in the baker's hands, of the way memory stirred and quieted when one walked a familiar road. Soon they reached the old bridge. It was not large, only a narrow arch of stone over the stream, but it marked the meeting of hillside and village land. Moss grew between its stones, and trailing ivy hung from one side. Beneath it, water moved in soft shadows, murmuring over pebbles, polished smooth by years of passing. The sheep crossed slowly, hooves tapping faintly on stone. Elias stopped halfway across and looked down. The stream reflected the sky in broken pieces, violet here, silver there, a trembling star caught between ripples. Along the bank, reeds leaned together. A frog plopped into the water with a small, round sound. Elias rested one hand on the bridge wall. The stone still held a little warmth from the day. He thought of all the evenings he had crossed this bridge, some in rain with his cloak heavy and the sheep eager for shelter, some in snow when every sound was covered and the world seemed made of wool and breath, some in spring with newborn lambs carried in his arms, some in high summer like this one when twilight came slowly and kindly. He had not needed every evening to be perfect. The years had taught him that peace was not the absence of weather, work, or weariness. Peace was sometimes only this: a hand on warm stone, a flock safely gathered, a dog waiting nearby, and the path still visible beneath the deepening sky. He left the bridge and followed the flock along the streamside lane. The village lay just ahead now, its cottages gathered at the foot of the hill, each with its own garden, its own gate, its own little pool of lamplight. The lane was bordered by elder bushes and nettles. A cat sat on a fence post, tail wrapped neatly around its paws, watching the sheep with calm disinterest. From one cottage came the sound of someone humming. From another came the clink of bowls being set on a table. The sheepfold stood at the edge of the village, beside Elias's cottage. It was a round enclosure of stone, with a wooden shelter at one side and clean straw spread beneath the roof. Beyond it grew a small garden where beans climbed poles, onions slept in neat rows, and herbs crowded together near the door. A lantern already burned in the cottage window. Elias had lit it before leaving that morning, trimming the wick so it would last until his return. Its glow was steady and amber, a small sun waiting at home. Brindle trotted ahead to the gate of the fold and stood proudly beside it. "Well done," Elias said. Brindle wagged once, slowly. Elias opened the gate and the sheep entered in a mild, woolly procession. Rowan stepped in first, bell sounding softly as if announcing the end of the day. Marta followed, then the others, each finding a familiar place. Some went to the water trough. Some nosed the straw. The lamb with the high tuft attempted one final skip, thought better of it, and leaned against its mother. Elias counted them as they passed. Not aloud, he did not need to. Each sheep was known to him not as a number but as a presence. Rowan with the calm eyes, Marta with the dark patch, Little Fern who liked to wander toward Clover, Bramble who always stood too near the gate. Two pale twins, nearly grown now, who still moved as though tied together by invisible thread. All were there. He closed the gate and set the latch. The sound was small, but satisfying. Night settled more fully then. The last color left the west, and the sky became a deep, soft blue. Stars gathered in greater number. The crescent moon rested above the hill, and the beech grove was now only a darker shape against the dark. Elias moved quietly through the fold, making sure the trough was full, the straw dry, the shelter clear. The sheep shifted around him, warm and drowsy. Their breathing filled the enclosure with a steady, comforting sound. A bell chimed once when Rowan lowered his head. Then even that was still. Brindle circled twice near the cottage step and lay down with a sigh. Elias entered his cottage. Inside, everything was simple and familiar. A wooden table, a chair polished by years of use, shelves with bowls, a loaf wrapped in cloth, a kettle near the hearth. Bunches of dried lavender and rosemary hung from a beam, scenting the room with summer even in the dark months. The fire had faded to embers, but it still breathed a gentle red glow. Elias set his crook by the door and removed his boots. He washed his hands in a basin, the water cool against his fingers. He poured a cup of tea from the kettle kept warm near the hearth. It was made from mint, chamomile, and a little honey from the beekeeper who lived beyond the mill. He sat by the open window and drank slowly. Outside, the fold was quiet. The village was quiet too. A door closed somewhere in the lane. A horse shifted in a stable. The stream continued its patient song beyond the bridge. Farther up the hillside, the trail lay empty now, pale in moonlight, holding the memory of the flock's passage until morning. Elias looked toward it. He imagined the path resting. The thyme no longer stirred underfoot. The hawthorns held their shadows. The fern hollow gathered dew. The spring in the beech grove continued to rise from the hidden heart of the hill. The orchard apples cooled beneath their leaves. Starling Field lay open to the stars. All the places he had passed through seemed to breathe in the night. And in his quiet cottage with the warm cup in his hands, Elias breathed with them. He did not think of tomorrow's tasks, though there would be tasks. There always were: fences to mend, wool to sort, weather to watch, bread to buy, neighbors to greet, lambs to guide away from foolishness. But those belonged to morning. Night had its own work, and that work was rest. So Elias let the day loosen. He let the hillside fade from thought into feeling. He let the bells become a memory. He let the memory become silence. Outside, Brindle slept on the step, one ear twitching now and then, as if he dreamed of younger days when he ran wide circles beneath the sun. In the fold, the sheep settled close, their wool silvered by moonlight. Rowan stood for a while beneath the open sky, then folded his legs under him and slept. Manta, dignified as ever, tucked her head and drifted into dreams. The lamb with the high tuft slept deeply, all leaps forgotten. The stars brightened. The moon moved slowly. The stream sang on, and the old trail, winding over the hill, rested beneath the hush of night. Now the story grows softer. The shepherd has come home. The flock is safe. The path is quiet. There is nothing more to carry, nothing more to follow, only the gentle rise and fall of breath, only the calm of the hillside beneath the moon. Let the bells fade into the distance. Let the grass grow still. Let the stream carry every last thought away, winding through reeds and stones, down through the sleeping valley, into the wide and peaceful dark. The cottage window glows for a little while longer. Then even that light softens. The shepherd rests. The dog dreams. The sheep sleep warmly in the fold. And you may rest too, as deeply as the valley, as peacefully as the stars above the quiet trail. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.